The phone rang at 2 in the morning. I remember because I had just finished watching some old baseball highlights, trying to wind down after a long day at the accounting firm. When I saw my sister Claire's name on the screen, my stomach dropped. Claire never called this late. She was a night shift nurse, yes, but she knew I had work in the morning. Something was wrong. I picked up and heard nothing but breathing at first. Then her voice came through, shattered into pieces I barely recognized. He left. He said she is his dream girl, and I was just a placeholder. Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. I grabbed my keys before she even finished talking. Before I share what happened next, I want to ask where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever known someone who was betrayed by the person they trusted most, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. You are going to want to hear how my sister went from her lowest moment to the strongest version of herself. Let me take you back to where it all began so you can understand exactly what Derek threw away. My sister Claire is 4 years younger than me. At 34 years old, she had already spent over a decade as an emergency room nurse at the largest hospital in Cincinnati. I used to visit her at work sometimes, bringing coffee during her breaks, and I would watch her move through that chaos like she was born for it. She held the hands of dying patients and told them everything would be okay. She stayed calm when families screamed at her out of fear and grief. She worked 12-hour shifts and sometimes longer, coming home with her scrubs stained and her feet aching, but she never complained. Claire met Derek 10 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. I was there that night. I remember watching this smooth-talking car salesman work his way across the room until he landed right next to my sister. Derek was charming, I will give him that. He had this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. He asked Claire questions about her work, her dreams, her favorite places to travel. By the end of the night, he had her phone number and a date scheduled for that weekend. They dated for 2 years before getting engaged. Our parents had passed away in a car accident when Claire was just 19 years old. A drunk driver ran a red light and took them from us in an instant. So when Claire got married, I was the one who walked her down the aisle. I remember the weight of that moment, the responsibility of standing in for our father, making sure my little sister got to her future husband safely. Derek cried when he saw Claire in her wedding dress, actual tears running down his face. I stood next to him as his best man and watched those tears fall, and I believed they were real. I believed he loved her as much as she loved him. I was wrong. Over the next 8 years, I watched my sister pour everything she had into that marriage. Claire worked 60 hours a week, so Derek could quit his job selling cars and chase his dream of becoming a real estate investor. She paid for his certification courses, his networking events, his expensive suits. When Derek needed capital for his first investment deal, Claire sold our parents' old car. That car was the last physical thing we had from them, the only object that still smelled faintly like our mother's perfume and our father's aftershave. Claire let it go because Derek said it was an investment in their future. Claire wanted children. She talked about it constantly in the early years, showing me nursery designs on her phone, asking my opinion on baby names. But Derek always had an excuse. "Not yet," he would say. "We need to be financially stable first." Year after year, the same answer. Claire was 34 years old, and her window was closing, but she kept waiting because she trusted Derek's plan. She trusted that all her sacrifices would pay off eventually. I should have seen the signs earlier. At Thanksgiving dinner last year, Derek showed up 2 hours late. When he finally arrived, his eyes stayed glued to his phone the entire meal. I tried to make conversation, asking about his latest real estate deals, but he gave me one-word answers before excusing himself to take a phone call outside. He was gone for nearly 30 minutes. Claire smiled through the whole dinner, making excuses for him. "He is just stressed about a big deal," she told me while clearing plates. But I noticed her hands were shaking. After everyone else left, when it was just the two of us cleaning up the kitchen, Claire finally let her guard down. She told me Derek had been sleeping in the spare bedroom for 3 months. He said he needed space to focus on work, and she believed him. She wanted to believe him because the alternative was too painful to consider. I wanted to say something that night. I wanted to tell her that husbands who love their wives do not need 3 months of sleeping in separate rooms to focus on work. But I stayed quiet. I told myself I was overthinking things, that every marriage has rough patches. I wish I had said something. Maybe it would have prepared her for what was coming. The drive from Columbus to Cincinnati takes about 2 hours if you push it. That night I made it in an hour and 40 minutes. I do not remember much about the drive itself, just the white lines of the highway blurring past and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. When Claire called me, she had just gotten home from a 12-hour shift in the emergency room. The kind of shift where you see car accident victims and heart attack patients and the worst moments of strangers' lives. She walked through her front door exhausted, expecting to find her husband asleep, and instead found him packing a suitcase. Derek did not even look at her when he explained. He just kept folding shirts and placing them in his bag while he destroyed her world. There was another woman, he said. Her name was Sienna. She was 26 years old and worked at a company Derek had been partnering with for a real estate deal. Derek called her his dream girl. He said Claire had been a placeholder until he found her. 14 months. That is how long the affair had been going on. 14 months of lies, of late nights at investor meetings, of business trips that were not business trips at all. 14 months where Claire was still paying for Derek's courses and supporting his dreams while he was building a secret life with someone else. On the kitchen table, Derek had left a stack of divorce papers. He had already filled out his portions. He did not even have the decency to discuss it with her first. The decision was already made. Claire was not being asked. She was being informed. I arrived at 4 a.m. Claire was sitting on the kitchen floor, still wearing her scrubs from work. There was dried blood on her white nursing shoes from the emergency room. She had not even had time to change before her life fell apart. I sat down next to her on that cold tile floor and held her while she stared at the wall. Placeholder, she kept saying. He said I was a placeholder. I stayed with Claire for the next week. She did not eat. She barely slept. I would wake up in the middle of the night and find her sitting by the front door waiting as if Derek might come back and tell her it was all a mistake. 3 a.m. was the time he used to come home from his late meetings. Her body had been trained to wait for him even now. The worst moment came on the 4th day. Claire was going through Derek's things, packing up what he had left behind, when she found a small velvet box hidden in his desk drawer. Inside was a diamond ring, beautiful and expensive, the kind of ring Claire had dreamed about for years. But it was not for her. Derek had bought it for Sienna using money from their joint account, the account that Claire had filled with her overtime pay and holiday shifts. I found Claire sitting on the bedroom floor, holding that ring box, her whole body shaking. That was when something broke inside her. Not just her heart, but something deeper. Her belief in herself and her judgment in her worth as a person. The divorce process was brutal. Derek hired an expensive lawyer, a man named Thompson, who played golf with him every other weekend. Claire did not know about their connection until later. Thompson pushed for everything. Half the house that Claire had paid 80% of the mortgage on. The new car that Claire had helped buy. Even Biscuit, their golden retriever, the dog that Claire had raised from a puppy, the dog that Derek had never once taken for a walk or to the vet. 1 week after Derek moved out, Sienna posted photos on social media. There she was posing in their new apartment, wearing the diamond ring that had been bought with Claire's money. The caption read, "When you finally find your forever person." Claire saw that post at midnight after another exhausting shift. Her coworker found her passed out in the break room an hour later. The doctors said it was a combination of stress, lack of sleep, and not eating. I called it heartbreak taken to its physical limit. That was the lowest point. My sister, the strongest woman I know, the one who held dying patients' hands and told them everything would be okay, could not even stand up anymore. And Derek. He was out there living his best life with his dream girl, not caring about the destruction he left behind. 3 months after Derek left, I received a phone call from Claire that changed everything. Her voice sounded different. Not healed, not happy, but something had shifted. There was steel underneath the sadness. She told me about a dream she had the night before. Our mother appeared not saying anything, just holding Claire's hand the way she used to when Claire was small and scared of thunderstorms. In the dream, Mom looked at Claire with eyes that said everything without words. You are stronger than you think you are. Claire woke up from that dream and made a decision. She was done being the victim. The first thing she did was fire her divorce lawyer, a man Derek had recommended months ago, and hire someone new. Patricia Chen was a 52-year-old woman who specialized in divorce cases involving financial deception. She had a reputation for being ruthless in protecting her clients, and when she looked at Claire's case files, her eyes went wide. Derek had been hiding money. For 2 years, he had been transferring funds from their joint accounts into a private investment account that Claire never knew existed. He had underreported his income-hidden commissions and funneled money through fake business expenses. Patricia estimated that Derek had stolen over $60,000 from their marriage. With this evidence, the entire divorce negotiation changed. Claire was no longer fighting from a position of weakness. She had leverage. Over the next 6 months, I watched my sister transform. She started running every morning at 5:30, something she had given up years ago, because Derek complained that her alarm disturbed his sleep. She signed up for a cooking class on Tuesday nights, something she had always wanted to do, but Derek called a waste of money. She cut her hair short for the first time since high school, a style that made her look younger and more confident than I had seen her in years. The hospital offered Claire a promotion to head nurse of the emergency department. It was a position she had been offered 3 times before but always turned down because Derek did not want her working more hours than she already did. This time, she said yes. Claire called me one evening, her voice bright with excitement. The divorce was finalized. She got the house for a price well below market value after Patricia proved Derek had manipulated the property assessment. Biscuit stayed with Claire where he belonged. And best of all, Claire received compensation for the money Derek had hidden, plus additional damages for his financial misconduct during the marriage. Meanwhile, Derek's life was falling apart. The friends we had in common started sharing stories. Sienna, the 26-year-old dream girl, turned out to have expensive tastes. She wanted designer handbags and luxury vacations and dinners at the finest restaurants in the city. Derek had promised her the world when he was spending Claire's money. Now that he was on his own, he could not deliver. His big real estate investment, the one he had been working on for months, collapsed completely. Without Claire to review his contracts and catch the errors, Derek had signed a deal with terrible terms. He lost almost everything he had invested money that was supposed to be his ticket to financial independence. I heard from a mutual friend that Sienna had started complaining. Derek was not the man she thought he was. He talked about staying home instead of going out. He suggested cooking dinner instead of eating at restaurants. He pushed back their European vacation to next year. The promises he had made to win her were turning into excuses. About a year after the divorce, I ran into Derek at the grocery store. I almost did not recognize him. He had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, and the confident swagger that used to define him was completely gone. He was standing in the frozen food aisle staring at microwave dinners like he had forgotten how to make decisions. When he saw me, he actually walked over. He asked how Claire was doing, and I heard something in his voice that sounded like regret. Maybe even longing. I looked at this man who had called my sister a placeholder, who had thrown away 8 years of devotion for a fantasy, and I felt nothing but pity. She is doing better than ever, I told him. And you? How is your dream girl? Derek did not answer. He just stood there holding a frozen pizza, looking like a man who had finally woken up from a dream only to realize he had burned down his own house while sleeping. A month later, I heard through the grapevine that Sienna had left Derek. She had found someone else, someone with more money and more excitement to offer. The dream girl, it turned out, had been dreaming of someone better too. Derek was just her placeholder until she found him. Derek lost everything. Not just Claire, but the life they had built together, the stability, the support, the unconditional love. He chased a fantasy and woke up with nothing. Meanwhile, Claire, she was just getting started. 2 years have passed since that phone call at 2 in the morning. I visited Claire last weekend, and the woman who opened the door was almost unrecognizable from the one who sat broken on her kitchen floor. Her house was warm and filled with the smell of something baking in the oven. Biscuit ran to greet me, his tail wagging so hard his whole body shook. There were fresh flowers on the table, and photos on the walls of Claire's recent hiking trips, cooking class graduations, and weekends spent with new friends she had made. Claire told me about her journey over coffee that afternoon. The first year was brutal, she admitted. Some days she could barely get out of bed. She went to therapy every week, sometimes twice a week, learning to understand why she had accepted so little for so long. She had to rebuild her sense of self-worth from the ground up. But slowly, day by day, she got better. She learned to enjoy her own company. She rediscovered hobbies she had abandoned. She built friendships that were based on mutual respect, rather than one-sided giving. 6 months ago, Claire started dating again. Not frantically searching for a replacement, not trying to prove anything to anyone, just open to the possibility of connection. She met a doctor named James who worked in the same hospital. He had noticed her for months, but waited patiently until she seemed ready before asking her to coffee. James is nothing like Derek. He does not make grand promises or sweep Claire off her feet with charm. Instead, he shows up. Every day he shows up. When I met him for the first time, I watched him quietly wash dishes after dinner without being asked, then offered to take Biscuit for his evening walk. He did not try to impress me with stories about himself. He just asked questions about Claire's childhood, genuinely interested in understanding who she was before he knew her. I asked Claire how she felt about him, and she smiled in a way I had not seen in years. "He makes me feel valued," she said. "Not because he tells me I am special, but because he treats me like I am." A few months ago, Derek sent Claire a message. It was late at night, 6 months after Sienna left him, and he wrote a long letter apologizing for everything. He admitted he had made the worst mistake of his life. He said he did not realize what he had in Claire until it was gone. He asked if there was any chance of trying again. Claire showed me the message. She was not asking for my advice. She did not need it. She had already made her decision. 2 years ago, she told me she would have run back to him. She would have forgiven everything, convinced herself that people deserve second chances, and thrown herself back into trying to make him happy. But that version of Claire was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth. She blocked Derek's number and never mentioned him again. I think about what Derek lost sometimes. He lost a wife who worked herself to exhaustion to support his dreams. He lost a partner who sold precious memories of her dead parents to give him opportunities. He lost 8 years of loyalty, patience, and unconditional love. He lost a woman who would have stood by him through anything. And what did he gain? A few months of excitement with someone who was using him the same way he used Claire. A broken career, an empty apartment, the knowledge that he traded gold for glitter and realized too late that glitter fades. What did Claire lose? A man who never deserved her. A marriage that was slowly suffocating her potential. Years of putting herself second. And what did she gain? Everything else. Freedom to become who she was meant to be. A career she loves. A dog who adores her. Friends who value her. A man who treats her with respect. And most importantly, the knowledge of her own strength. So if you are watching this, and you have ever been called a placeholder, if someone has ever made you feel like you were not enough while they search for something better, please hear this. The problem was never you. The problem was someone who could not recognize what they had while they had it. Derek spent years searching for his dream girl. He did not realize until too late that she had been standing right next to him all along, paying his bills, and supporting his dreams, and loving him with everything she had. What did Derek lose after leaving Claire for his dream girl? Everything. everything that mattered. And Claire, she did not lose anything. She was set free. I want to ask you something before we end today. Have you ever experienced this kind of betrayal, where someone made you feel like you were not enough? Or have you watched someone you love go through it? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the best healing comes from knowing we are not alone. If this story touched you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these videos and maybe find the strength they need to walk away from situations that are hurting them. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories about people who found their way through darkness into light. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you for being here and listening to Claire's story. Wherever you are in your journey, I hope you remember one thing: you deserve someone who sees you as their first choice, not their backup plan. You deserve to be loved fully, not used temporarily. Take care of yourselves.